It's YouTube Wednesday! I'm making a standard and staple haunted house robe. It is very rare / never do I put an actor in just a black robe and a mask. But I use a robe as a base for all kinds of costumes. I like detailed costumes, details achieved through layers. One layer of a robe underneath and then other things on top of it to give it texture and depth. That works just fine. So I'm going to make a basic robe. This is just broadcloth from the fabric store. This happened to be $3 a yard. I'm doing a snow and ice theme, so this is a blue textured fabric. Again, I didn't want just straight blue. I really want some of that texture in it. And I also have, it's got some sparkles, which is kind of cool if it's the ice theme that I'm doing. I'll follow patterns. I'm doing this as easy as I possibly can. I'm going to take the fabric, which normally it's about 40 inches wide, between 40 and 55. So I'm going to hold it, find the fold in the middle, hold it, stretch my arms out. This is as long as a set of sleeves needs to be. So I'm going to pinch that off right there, and I'm just going to cut it. For sewing, always have a good set of sharp scissors. Try not to use them for any other thing that you do. I'm pretty terrible about that. But again, as I often have to say, do as I say, not as I do. Since this is your sleeves, this is both of your sleeves in one. Alright? This is the sleeves of the robe. I don't have to do any much more work to this at all. Fold it. Now this is where my neck hole needs to be. You will be amazed at how little you have to cut for your head to fit through. I have a gigantic melon. And just that right there is normally enough for me to get my head through on occasion. Because it's doubled. Remember, everything is doubled. I'm going to check and see if I can put my giant head through this hole. Alright, it's through. I have my right size. Yeah, a lot of this is just folding the fabric right, making sure it's lined up the right way. So once again, I have that. And now I'm going to set this piece aside. Okay? I'm setting that piece aside. I'm going to take the fabric, which is 1 yard. Because most people are about 6 feet tall, this piece is going to be about 2 yards long. Alright? And the width all comes from the width of the bolt. So between 45 inches or sometimes 60, depending on what kind of fabric you get. Look for something with texture. I'm going to take 1 yard of this. I'm not going to necessarily measure a yard, but it's about half of this. Alright, so that's a yard. I'm going to cut that off with my main piece of fabric. And this is going to be the front and the back of the robe. Okay, I've cut 1 yard off of the fabric that I purchased to make this with. And I went ahead, I purchased, I think 6 yards, because I'm doing some extra pieces on it. You can go bare bones on this with no hood, if your mask has a hood included, for 3 yards. Which is sleeves and this piece here that I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece where I need it. My bolt was 45 inches wide. So that means that this piece here is 22.5 inches wide. So I'm going to cut it in half long ways. And again, remember I guessed? Well, it looks like I am 37 inches. So I'm 1 inch off of being an exact yard. Big whoop. I'm going to cut this lengthways, which is down the middle of that bolt of fabric. Okay. Now, 22.5, all right? That is what my measurement is across here. My robe that I have done here, this top piece, I'm going to go ahead and fold it. I'm about to attach a 22.5-inch piece to it. I'm going to be very clear here so I get that out of the way. Basically, I'm just going to attach it down the front and down the back. I'm going to leave the sides open for leg movement because, you know, mobility is huge for a haunt and you don't want it snagging on things. And frankly, if you sewed it all the way down to the ground, you'd have to walk like Morticia Addams because it wouldn't open up enough. But 22.5 is my measurement, that how wide this piece is. I'm going to cut that measurement in half. Okay, that's my 22.5. I'm going to cut that measurement in half just by folding the fabric. I don't have to do any math. And that is where I have to start sewing these sleeves from. And I'm going to give them about 2 inches of leeway anyhow, just because for breathing. You can see I've got this piece here folded, telling me where. I'm going to give myself that 2-inch leeway. I'm going to sit down real quick and mark all the way through these, because I've got the first 2 layers are one sleeve, and the second 2 layers are the other sleeve. Now is where I have to sew. I have my fabric here. I'm just going to take one set of sleeves. I'm going to pinch the 2 together. The 2 halves I'm sewing. I'm going to start at that mark I made and sew down to the cuff, leaving about a 1/2 inch seam allowance hanging over the other side. I always backstitch a lot and extra in order to really have a good durable seam. I'm not going to do anything special with the edges of this. It's just for a haunt costume. Alright. Always leave the needle down. If you stop for any reason, once again, I hit the end, so I'm back stitching heavy. I now have my neck up here and one sleeve, because this is now a tube. Switching over to the other side, find my mark, and I'm sewing from it to the end of the sleeve. When I cut that 1 yard piece in half, it gave me 2 pieces. Up here is the neck of the robe. Down here is going to be the waist or belly of the robe. This is one of those pieces that I cut off of that 1/2 yard. I am very simply going to lay it on here in the center, line it up with the front, and I'm just going to pinch it, and that's where I sew this together. I'm going to sew this really fast, and then I'll put on the other one. Once again, about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're only sewing to one side of the robe. You don't want to sew your robe together. Alright, let me set up the other side, then I will sew it. I'll throw it on real quick, just so you guys can see it. Now, you have a seam here. That's fine, it's right around the waistline. I'd put a belt over this anyway, like I said, layers. The robe comes, you can't really see it, but it comes just above my ankles, so that's kind of perfect. I have nice billowy sleeves. That's good, you know, you can do, you make your sleeves a little longer, you can do cool stuff like this, character-wise. It comes down to my wrist on both sides. That's good. It's a functional little robe. Now it is split. It is split to the waist. So you might want to make just a wrap skirt underneath of it. But, like I said, I like the movement. I want my haunt actors to run. If look is a bigger deal, just sew 2 of these panels together, which is 1 more yard, onto a strap. Tie it around your waist, it ties in the front, and then it acts like modesty panels that go all the way down to your ankles. So that's another option, something else to do. I'm going to make a hood for this really quick. I'm going to do 1 more yard of this fabric. Okay. I'm cutting 1 more yard. I measured it the exact same way as last time. I'm not 6 feet tall, but I have long arms, so I know I'm going to be close. My fabric is folded over. It's folded over right side out. I'm going to fold it over inside out. I'll fold it over inside out and just sew down that seam. I now have the hood of it, which is just a tube. I'm going to flip this inside out. Now my seam is on the inside, and it's a little more presentable than if it were on the outside. Hood on, just like this. So now whatever mask or costume I'm in, I'm hooded, I have a robe. I would probably use a different fabric and make a tabbard for this, which is just a long strip with a hole in it for your head. You put that on, and that way you have 2 layers there. You make a belt for it, you put some stuff hanging off the belt, and you're closing in on a costume at that point in time. But it is so simple to have and make the hood. You don't have to wear the hood on. You don't have to have the hood up on your head. just having it around your neck adds those layers and the detail. It helps. You can, of course, use fabric stiffener, or I made a nice long hood so I can fold it in on itself like this. If I fold it in, let me press it down real quick. If I fold it in on itself, A, you can't see the material that looks different on the inside, and B, it makes it stiffer and is a little more face shading if you want it to be that. A trick we used to do at Terror on Church Street was just wear a baseball hat inside of your hood, and then the baseball hat brim holds it out here above your face. So it's daytime, and it's pretty dark in my inside of this, so if I was wearing a blackout mask also, you wouldn't see me.